Big Ten Championships pre-seeds have been released, and I'm going to tell you who is the best shot of winning a Big Ten title this weekend. So let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name's Josiah, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling. On this channel, we talk all about wrestling news, tips, and lifestyle. And this week, we're talking about the Big Ten Championships, which go down this Saturday and Sunday. Now, before I dive into the weight-by-weight preview, I want to let you know that you can watch live the first couple of rounds on Flow Wrestling, and then you can watch the championships on the Big Ten Network. So, without further ado, let's dive into this weight-by-weight preview, starting off at 125 pounds. At 125 pounds, this, to be honest with you, is really a battle for second. At number one, we have Spencer Lee, who is actually yet to win a Big Ten title. He's been thwarted in the past by Nathan Tomasello as well as Sebastian Rivera, and this is his first year that he really looks to win that title without any massive competition. He's already pretty much majored or just beat pretty bad every single guy in this weight so far. Looking down at number two, we have Devin Schroeder of Purdue, who Lee already tech-followed this season. Now, as far as these other guys, as far as Medley, as far as Cardani, as far as Pat McKee, all these guys are pretty tough, but you look at 2 and 3 even. Schroeder has already tech-followed McKee this season and beat Cardani. So there is going to be some competition here. I believe it's Schroeder who had some competition already with Cronin this season. But then you look at as far as some of those 5 through 8 guys, and that's where it gets kind of really interesting as far as who falls where. But really, at 125, it's a battle for 2nd through 8th. And the Big Ten will take 8 wrestlers, the top 8 wrestlers, automatically to the national tournament. Now, at 133 pounds, this is a weight where I'm so excited to see what goes down. At 133, between Seth Gross, Roman Bravo Young, Austin DeSanto, Travis Petrosky, Sebastian Rivera, I mean, oh my gosh, this has to be one of the most exciting weights to watch this weekend. I mean, without a doubt. Now, the top 7 go to the national tournament, but I'm just really interested in what the heck is going to happen in these top 4. We already know that Seth Gross has wins on the year to Roman Bravo Young. He beat him already in a duel, although Roman Bravo Young really pushed the pace on him towards the rest of that match, and it was a tight match. And the same can be said about him with Sebastian Rivera as well as Austin DeSanto. And Austin DeSanto is the guy who did beat Seth Gross earlier this season. We've also seen Roman Bravo Young and Austin DeSanto go at it this year. This is just a weight where anything can happen, and whoever comes out on top of this weight will be sitting pretty at the national tournament. Now, we're already looking forward to possibly a Travis Petrosky and Sebastian Rivera quarterfinals. Now, that will be an exciting one. And then you look to Seth Gross and Sebastian Rivera in a semifinal match if both these guys get to that point. And we saw them already earlier in the season meet at Midlands in the semifinals, and that was a controversial match that came down to a ref's decision ultimately. And I'm excited to see that rematch as well as everything else. And the other thing I'm excited about is 141 pounds. At 141, we have another incredible weight. Nick Lee, Luke Pletcher, Max Murin, Chad Red, Tristan Moran, Mitch McKee. I mean, the list goes on and on here. But at 141, the Big Ten is taking 8 qualifiers to the national tournament. So in order to qualify for nationals, you got to sneak into that top 8. These are the pre-seeds right here, 1 through 8. Number 1 sitting at the top is Nick Lee. And yeah, he deserves that top spot because he's been pretty much crushing the entire competition this season. He beat Luke Pletcher pretty handily in the duel against Ohio State, Penn State, and Ohio State. But Luke Pletcher is not going to be sitting back like he did before. He's going to be looking to win that Big Ten title. And I'm also interested to see where Max Murin falls into this, because Max Murin hasn't wrestled Nick Lee this year. He hasn't wrestled Luke Pletcher. He does have a loss to Chad Red, and you look at a Tristan Moran, at a Mitch McKee. Each of these guys bring something special to this weight class. I'm interested to see where Max Murin will turn out. Maybe he'll end up on top this weekend. But let's talk about 149. At 149 pounds, wow. We've already seen each of these guys at the top of the weight class this season. Simi Sasso has been sitting up at number one the last couple of weeks. Sasso has a loss on the season already to Brayton Lee, but he does have a nice win over Pat Lugo. Now, it wasn't a massive win. It was a win in sudden victory, a win that came down to similar to a couple of these other matches I was talking about, a point. It came down to a point, came down to takedown, and Sammy Sasso ended up on top of Pat Lugo. But this is an interesting weight at the Big Tens. Now, those three guys I think are sitting pretty solidly at the top, considering that you look down at number 4, you look down at Kanan Storr from Michigan. He was teched by Sasso this season. Then you look at Graham Rooks, who lost to Cole Martin at the number 6 spot, but he has a decision against Colin Puritan. And then you look at Jared Verclaren, who has, up until this point, last month or so, he hasn't had the best year. He hasn't beat anybody great until he had that great match against Keyshawn Clark. He had some tight matches with Sammy Sasso and Brayton Lee that came down to close calls. And I think Jared Verclaren is somebody not to keep out of the mix here at 149 pounds. And please, as I continue, let me know who you think is going to win each of these weights at the Big Ten. Moving on to 157 pounds. At 157, we have the number one guy in the entire country in Ryan Deacon. And at this weight, at 157, that we're taking 6 guys to the national tournament. 6 wrestlers will make the national tournament, whoever places here. Ryan Deacon sitting at the top, very pretty, from Northwestern. Now, you also have Caleb Young, who Young in the past has actually beat Deacon, which I think makes this weight very, very exciting. And he hasn't just beat Deacon once. He's beat him twice last year. Now, this year, what's interesting is Young does have a couple of losses out of conference, not in conference, though. He has losses to David Carr, to Monday, Quincy Monday, as well as to Wyatt Sheets. All of those losses on his record, but not in the Big Ten. And if Caleb Young could pull off something big here and beat Ryan Deacon, that would make waves in the NCAA. Then you look at a Kendall Coleman from Purdue. Coleman and Lewin went to sudden victory at the Michigan State Open. So those are 2 guys who are going to have a tight match here, as well as moving from that 2 to 3 spot, yeah, it is a little bit of a discrepancy considering that Coleman was pinned by Young at Midland this year. However, it was in the 3rd period, and once they wrestled again, it was actually 4-3 in a tight duel. So that will be interesting there. And then you look at the rest of these guys, all going to show some competition. Moving down the list, moving down to 165 pounds. This is another weight that, I mean, it's a big rivalry. It's a big rivalry, and what else is to be said here, Vincenzo Joseph versus Alex Marinelli, number 1 versus number 2 in the entire country, but also in the Big Tens. If these 2 guys make it to the finals, it will be a rematch from last year where we know that Alex Marinelli did beat Vincenzo Joseph in the finals last year. And Vincenzo Joseph will be looking to win his first Big Ten championship. Can he do it? I certainly hope so. It's his last year to win a Big Ten title, and it would be great to see that. However, part of me wants to see something crazy happen where Marinelli does win. It sets up for a great rematch in the possible NCAA finals. But then you have Evan Wick, you have Isaiah White, and Ethan Smith and a Bronigal. I mean, I believe it's the top 2 really that you're looking at here. But as far as the rest of these guys, you have Wick, who has beat White early on in the year. He's majored Ethan Smith. And then you have White, who has pinned Ethan Smith. All these guys will be putting up a fight, and there will be some interesting weights and battles going down in that lower half of the bracket. Now, looking at 174 pounds, 9 qualifiers here between Michael Kemmer and Mark Hall. That's going to be exciting in itself because these 2, for the most part, have dominated the weight. These 2 have been the top tier of their weight class, majoring, pinning, Attack following pretty much all of these other guys, looking at Leidy, Labriola, Skatska. Now, it's the postseason, and anything can happen, and I think that's what is exciting, is that anything can happen in the postseason. But with that being said, while Mark Hall does have a loss to Michael Kemmer on the season, he has pinned Labriola, he's beat Skatska, he's pinned Romero. Kemmer, on the other hand, has beat Leidy, has beat Labriola, as well as pinned Skatska. Now, I think that either of these guys could be considered a favorite. Mark Hall is looking for another Big Ten title. He's looking for his third title. Kemmer looking for his first. Been bested in the past by a couple guys, but either way, this is going to be an exciting weight. Moving on to 184 pounds. This is a weight that isn't necessarily massive for the Big Ten as far as like 1, 2, or 3 guys, considering this is a weight that's really dominated by the ACC this year in the top weights. However, I think that could change. That could potentially change come a couple weeks from now. But looking at these top guys, Aaron Brooks actually sits at the top of the weight class at 184 pounds. The freshman sits at the top of the weight class. But close behind him, you have Cam Caffey, who already has wins on the year over Taylor Vance, Assad, and Johnny Sebastian. You also have Abe Assad, who does have a loss to Aaron Brooks, but has a win over Taylor Vance. And Taylor Vance isn't somebody to be taken lightly. He isn't somebody to be left out of this mix, considering he is a former All-American. Any of these guys, I believe, could win that weight class. This is a very young weight class, and one we're going to see battle for the next couple of years, in my opinion. But at 197 pounds, sitting at the top, where you have 6 qualifiers going to the national tournament, sitting at the top is Kollin Moore, and he's sitting pretty at the top. He's looking for his third Big Ten title. Last year, yes, he did lose to Bo Nickel, did lose out on his chance to get 4 titles, but he's looking for his third, and I think he's going to do it. He already has a win over Shakur Rashid, over Eric Schultz, just a decision, 6-2 decision earlier on in the year, but it is a decision. He's a winner over Pagano, over Davison, over Bruner, so he has solid wins over all these guys. A very solid bonus percentage as well for Kollin Moore. The rest of these guys, Eric Schultz, who has a win over Jacob Warner, Schultz of Nebraska, as well as Jacob Warner moving now into that a little bit. Schultz has wrestled strong this year, has wins over Rashid, has wins over Pagano, as well as Strigow. I think it's going to be some interesting competition in that 2 through 8 range, and maybe we see something crazy happen where Schultz, gets in the finals, and maybe he makes that gap a little bit tighter, and maybe he pulls off an upset there. But let's move on to the last weight of the day, and then I'll talk about the team scores a little bit. So, at 285 pounds, the guy who I got the number 1 seed is Mason Paris of Michigan. And this is surprising considering in the national rankings, many rankers have Gable Steveson above Mason Paris. And that's because Paris hasn't beat Steveson yet this year, and Mason Paris, while he does have a better record, he does have a more aggressive winning percentage. Gable Steveson just doesn't have that this year because he didn't wrestle at the beginning of the year, and that's fair. This will be the tournament that decides where these guys deserve to be ranked because they're the top guys of their entire weight class. And you look at the top guys in Hilger, in Jensen, in Traub, Nevels, Cassiope. It's a dominant weight class and one of my favorite weight classes to watch, honestly. Now, Paris so far this season has beat Stencil, beat him a couple times, I believe, actually. He beat Hilger, he pinned David Jensen, as well as Anthony Cassiope. Now, Cassiope, obviously, he's pinned by Paris, he's beat by Gable. He's not somebody he's wrestled these guys before, and now this is the time where he can make that switch. So maybe we see something out of Cassiope. However, I will say that Paris and Gable are 2 of the most dominant heavyweight wrestlers. It's some of the most dominant wrestlers in the entire country. And I'm excited to see where they fall into the mix. Now, as far as the team race goes, Iowa is the clear favorite for teams in the Big Tens. But you look at Iowa, Penn State, Ohio State, just those three schools alone account for 6 of the number 1 ranked wrestlers in the entire country. And it's going to be exciting to see what happens there with those teams. So you have Iowa sitting at the top, but if Penn State can pull some of those upsets, or maybe a Nebraska and Wisconsin can beat some of those top guys in early rounds, we could see some of that tide start to shift. Iowa is the favorite, but then we have Penn State, Ohio State, Nebraska, and Wisconsin, who all bring in strong wrestlers and look to, contend for a Big Ten title. So what do you think is going to happen this weekend? Please let me know in the comments below.